Representative Bourdeaux's campaign manager. And I just wanted to thank all of you guys so much for coming out today to celebrate our new office opening. We know with COVID, it's been a minute since we've all been able to gather together, but we appreciate everyone wearing their masks and coming out today and helping us celebrate our beginning of our re-election campaign. Yeah. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to our current and future Congresswoman, Representative Bourdeaux.
Woo! Thank you, Ashley. All right. I love these makeshift things that they do in the campaigns. Well done. So Ashley has already introduced herself. Hold on one second here. There we go. Has already introduced herself. She is the new campaign manager. She steps into some big shoes for all of you who knew Shelby, who is fabulous. Shelby has gone on to go run a governor's race in Nebraska, so very exciting there. I also want to introduce you to some other members of my campaign. We have Ibeli Monsogo here, who is running the field campaign. And Ibeli was with me back in 2020 when she was a field organizer and is from a wonderful church, which I see is well represented here, Ministerio Pentecostal. Bienvenidos. Good to have you here. We have Matt Yarborough here, who is a deputy campaign manager, and really excited to have him. He's moved over from the official side, and he was out there working in community outreach, and now he's doing something similar on the campaign side. And then we have the long-standing Caitlin Rudin, who is finance director, has been with me for a long time now. She is the most long-standing member of the campaign. Because if you know how these things work, you kind of scale down during the off year and then you bump back up as you get on, and so she has been with me. And then we have Mackenzie Waller, who has come on as call-time manager, but she's well known because she has run a bunch of local races around here. So one of the really important things that I want to talk about is how, as I have done all of these campaigns, and this will be my 6th campaign in 4.5 years. And that's been a lot, I won't kid you. But what we have done, as we have done campaign after campaign in this way, is we've slowly built a farm team. You know, we've built the young people on the ground who are here to help. And let me just recognize the amazing chairwoman, Nicole Love Hendrickson. Woo! Jeanette is in the house. We're so glad to have you. But we built this capacity here in this district, and it's so wonderful that now I'm able to recruit people who are from the district, who know this area, and that has been really a sea change. But let me back up. Some of you guys have probably heard this speech 100 times, but some of you are new to it, and I'm just going to walk you through what has brought me to this day and to this moment. So really, before 2017, I had been involved in public policy and politics for a long time. I was director of Georgia's Senate Budget and Evaluation Office, had been a legislative aide, was a teacher at the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies at Georgia State. But something changed, and it probably changed for many of us. I woke up on November 9th of 2016 and found out that Donald Trump had been elected president. And I think it seemed to me, as it did probably to many of us, that the urgency of this moment was going to require us to do things we had never done before, to step out of our comfort zone, to take risks, to do whatever we could to defend this country from what I perceived and what has proven over and over again to be a really racist and authoritarian movement that could destroy our democracy and our country. So in 2017, I stood up the race for Georgia's 7th Congressional District, and as many of you all know, I started in a 6-way primary with some formidable candidates. But I, along with many of you in this room, we set ourselves to the task at hand, and we went out, and we raised the money, and we knocked the doors, we made the phone calls, we did the work of getting to know the very diverse communities of this district. I went to the churches, to the temples, to the mosques, the synagogues, the civic associations, the indivisible groups, the meetups and the huddles. And many representatives from all of those groups are represented here today. It was very tough, but I prevailed after a runoff. And through this effort, something important started to happen. People in this district started to wake up. 30,000 people voted in the primary in 2018, and 30% had never voted in a Democratic primary before. Then in July of 2018, I turned around to take on the 4-term Republican incumbent who'd never gotten below 60% of the vote. Unlike the 6th district, the National Democratic Party never thought I could win, and they never invested in us and our effort. I couldn't even get professional campaign staff to work on my campaign. We were all new to the congressional campaigns, and many of you remember the Spencer Smith, who so valiantly fought as campaign manager in that race.
Yes.
Woo. And then went on to help Nicole win in her race. I had my finance director at that time was one of my MPA students, my master's students, who I begged to come and help me in that race. My field director was Charles Morgan, who had never worked on a campaign before. Jake Best was my comms director. He went on to go work for John Ossoff, so they've all gone on to go do great things. But when they started with me, we were all learning. And it was with enormous grit that we knocked the doors, we made the phone calls, we raised the money, we did the mail, the digital, and the TV, and I raised $2 million, more than I ever thought in a million years that I could raise. And we closed a 20 percentage point gap, and I came within 433 votes of flipping the seat, the closest race in the country. But I didn't get there right away, because we had some problems in Gwinnett. I remember Rob Woodall calling me at 2:30 in the morning. I guess he wanted a concession. We were so tired, poor Spencer was like walking around in circles. He couldn't figure out what to do, we were so tired. And I told him that it wasn't over, because we still had to count the provisional ballots and the absentee ballots that they had thrown out. And I had to bring litigation, because at one point, 1/3 of the absentee ballots thrown out in the state of Georgia came out of Gwinnett. And I know so many of you showed up in the cold rain of that November in 2018 and went door to door to tell people that their vote had not been counted. I actually still have a chip in my wedding ring where I slammed my finger in the door as I was going in during that recount process, and I nearly ripped my finger off. But I keep that little chip there to remind me of what it takes in Georgia to protect voting rights. And every day, even now, you'll see me thinking about it. I think about that all the time. So at the end of the day, right, I came close, but I didn't make it over the line. But after that, all of the work that had gone into building the community that was invested in the 7th district, I knew I couldn't leave all of that effort behind. We had to keep going. So I got back into the race and again faced a 6-way primary. This time, members of the National Democratic Party actually weighed in behind my opponents, perhaps not realizing in Georgia that we have a runoff, and that if I had had a runoff, I would have lost that election because the Republicans didn't make the mistake. Republicans weighed in behind Rich McCormick, so Rob Woodall had retired, and they decided to put all of their chips behind him, an ER doctor and a former Marine. But again, with your help, we redoubled our efforts. We reached out again to the diverse communities of this very practical and middle-class district, and we knocked the doors and made the phone calls and raised the money and got up on TV and digital and radio. And during this campaign, COVID hit, so we couldn't go to a lot of the community organizations. We had the George Floyd marches. The primary date was moved. But again, with your help, I prevailed. I did that race, again, with no outside help from DC. I won with a 41% margin to get over 50% and avoid the runoff. And again, something special happened here. 85,000 people voted in the Democratic primary, and over 50% had never voted in a Democratic primary before. And then I had to turn around and take on Rich McCormick, and more was spent up on TV against me than almost any other candidate in the country. It's hard to believe. I mean, I go through this, and it is true. It's unbelievable. But again, dear Lord, we knocked the doors, we made the phone calls, we raised the money, we got up on TV, digital, radio. This time the National Party did come in, so to their credit, they finally realized that this district was flippable. And with an enormous effort, we had huge turnout. Everybody turned out. 75% turnout in Gwinnett, 80% turnout in Forsyth. With a huge effort, we prevailed. And I was the only Democratic pickup in the country. Now, let me revisit how important that was, because I think people forget. The Democratic Party identified 33 red to blue candidates. These are the challengers. And this district was the only one that flipped. 13 Democratic incumbents lost, which meant that when I went to Washington in January of 2021, we had a 5-vote margin in the House out of 435 members. However, my campaign was still not done. I know many of you hung with me. We turned around and we threw ourselves into the Senate runoffs. And from that past race, I had 100 organizers, interns, and fellows, 850 volunteers, and we took that infrastructure and we threw ourselves into the Senate race. I cannot think of any congressional district or any community in the country that has proved more important to the Democrats than Georgia's 7th congressional district. So what happens next? 2021 was a crazy year. I went to Congress on behalf of all of you. I was so honored to do that. Right off the bat, we faced insurrection, COVID, but we passed the American Rescue Plan, which has had an enormous and beneficial impact on all of our communities. From everything from getting vaccines and arms, to the testing, to the support for our schools, to $1 trillion that went to small businesses, to help for our local governments, our state governments, and was so honored to be with Nicole when she opened a one-stop shop down in Centerville to help provide public health and mental health services to parts of the community that had not been served before. All of that came out of the American Rescue Plan. We passed the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We got Build Back Better through the House. And we must have passed a dozen or so bills also that are very, very important, from immigration reform to protecting the right to choose, to the Equality Act for LGBT community. Many, many that are sadly stuck in the Senate. In 2021, the Republicans actually spent $5 million on TV and digital attacking me again. I know you guys probably saw some ads, right, last year? I was defended by $3 million of Democratic ads, so $8 million was spent on TV. More, again, than anybody in the country by a significant magnitude of order. I don't know what they were thinking, because I had thought they were coming for me, right? But then in November, redistricting happened. And everything has twisted around again. So I'm just gonna lay it out, what's happened. The Republicans decided to draw the 7th district to be more Democratic. This district currently is 75% Gwinnett. The new congressional district is 90% Gwinnett. 60% of the new congressional district is the old 7th district, right? And they just dropped it down into South Gwinnett and gave me East Gwinnett. Unfortunately, they then turned around and made the 6th district more Republican. And so, unfortunately, Lucy McBath has decided, rather than to run there, she is going to move from Marietta into Gwinnett to run against me here. I have spent some time soul searching on this one. If you go see any event I was ever at with her in public, I referred to her as my sister. So this is very, very tough for me. And I assure you all that if the shoe had been on the other foot, if her district had been drawn more Democratic and mine more Republican, it would not have crossed my mind in a million years to move from here to there to run against her. So I've had to make a choice, but I have decided definitively and firmly that I am running again for Georgia's 7th district. I live in Gwinnett. My son is enrolled in public school in Gwinnett. I have run 5 campaigns in Gwinnett. I am the incumbent Congresswoman from Gwinnett, and I am deeply invested in this community and what it represents. As the Congresswoman from this district, I wake up every morning thinking about how I can better help the people of this community. To me, this is not just any old generic Democratic district, and you all are not just generic interchangeable Democratic voters. You are my friends. You are people I know. You are people I have campaigned with. You are people whose lives I am deeply invested in. And I have worked on piece after piece of legislation, each grounded in the stories and the needs of this community, of our community. From the PPP Extension Act, that was the idea of Tony Rodriguez, who runs the Aurora Theater in Lawrenceville. This was one of the first bills in Congress to pass and allowed 270,000 businesses to access $5 billion in forgivable loans, with a focus on women, veteran, and minority-owned businesses. To the abandoned malls bill that came from driving past Gwinnett Place Mall. To my leading the charge in the House to expand Medicaid, because I have heard from doctors in this district about the suffering of people who don't have health insurance. to my fight on infrastructure, because I know that the #1 barrier to economic development in our community is congestion. It's an economic issue, it's a social justice issue, it's an environmental issue. And that was one of the reasons I fought so hard for that bill. To my passion for voting rights, which we have fought for on the ground in election after election here in Gwinnett. And I am working on more legislation around workforce development and around immigration that are grounded in the needs and the conversations with people in this district. But even more than that, I am deeply invested in the democratic project that is Georgia's 7th district. We are diverse in the truest sense of the word. We are Black, Hispanic, white, Asian, gay, straight, moderate, liberal, conservative, and the list goes on and on. We are from here, we are from all over the country, we are from all over the world. Now, every generation is called on to renew our democracy. And every generation must ask itself the question of whether the center can hold, whether we can come together as one country with a shared vision, or whether we will break apart in tribal enclaves. It is fitting that we were one of the most decisive districts in the country to stand against the tribalism of Trump. Because in Gwinnett, in the diverse communities of the 7th district, this is where the future of our democracy is being forged. I am running again for the 7th district because I understand the vision and the challenge that is the 7th district in a way that few other people do. And I am running because I know that you and I, deep down, we stand together united. A diverse community that believes in democracy, that believes in opportunity and the promise of the American dream. We all dream of a country where every mother and father, regardless of racial or ethnic background, wakes up and is excited about the future for their children. This is why I'm running for Georgia's 7th district. And I ask for your vote in the primary on May 24th, and I ask for your help with the campaign that will take us to victory in May and then again to November. Thank you for being here. And now it's time for the debate.